Hi class, today we're going to learn about section 1.5, angle relationships. This also goes with standard 3. Our objective will be to identify and use special pairs of angles. So here are our 4 special angle pairs. You need to make sure you write these down. We will continue using them for the rest of the year. The first one is vertical angles. Vertical angles are opposite angles formed by 2 intersecting lines. So when 2 lines intersect, it makes an X. So here we have one line intersecting another line. Vertical angles are going to be the angles opposite of each other. So one pair of vertical angles in this picture is angles 1 and 2. The second pair is angles 3 and 4. So we will learn more about vertical angles in a minute, but just make sure you know how to identify them. Next one, adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are coplanar angles with a common side and a common vertex. Here are 2 adjacent angles. The common side is this side right here. The common vertex is this vertex. So angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent because they share a side and a vertex. Complementary angles. Complementary angles are 2 angles whose measures add up to 90 degrees. So here's an example of complementary angles. Remember that this symbol right here shows 90 degrees, and these 2 angles are adding up to 90 degrees. So angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary. Now, they do not have to be side by side or adjacent. They could be 2 separate angles as well. For example, if I had just one angle here that was 20 degrees and another angle that was 70 degrees, those would also be complementary. So they do not have to be adjacent to be complementary. Next one, supplementary angles are 2 angles whose measures add up to 180 degrees. So here we have a straight line that's 180 degrees, and now we have 2 angles forming that. So angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. Again, just like complementary, they do not have to be adjacent. If I had one angle that was 150 and another angle that was 30, I could say that they were supplementary. Also be sure to write down that this angle pair right here, whenever it does form a straight line, is called a linear pair. You might want to write a little note about that. Alright, so a special property about vertical angles is that they are always congruent. Vertical angles are congruent. Knowing that, we can find the value of x here. These 2 are vertical angles because we have 2 lines that are intersecting, and these 2 angles are across from each other. Since they're congruent, that means I can set them equal. Then I solve my equation by subtracting 3x, and I get that 35 is equal to x. So vertical angles are always congruent. Supplementary angles, which can also be called a linear pair if they're forming a straight line. If 2 angles are supplements of the same angle, or congruent angles, then the 2 angles are congruent. So let me show you a picture of what this is saying, because the picture is easier to understand. Angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. I know they're supplementary because they're forming a line, and a line is always 180 degrees. Angle 2 and 3 are supplementary because they are forming a line, and a line is always 180 degrees. So let's say that angle 1 was 30 degrees. That means that angle 2 would have to be 150 in order for them to add up to 180. Well, if angle 2 is 150, then angle 3 has to be 30 degrees. Notice that angle 1 and angle 3 are exactly the same. Not only are these vertical angles, they are supplements of the same angle. So angle 1 is supplementary to angle 2, and angle 3 is supplementary to angle 2. Anytime that happens, the two angles that are supplementary will be equal because they're supplementary to the same angle. The same thing happens with complementary angles. If two angles are complements of the same angle, then the two angles are going to be congruent. So here we have two complementary angles. They're forming a right angle, 90 degrees. This one's 30, this one's 60. Let's say I throw in another 90-degree angle right here. If this angle is 30, then this one has to be 60 to add up to 90 degrees. Notice that this one is complementary to the 30, and this one is complementary to the 30, which makes those two angles congruent. That's all for today.